I thought
History in the making. XFL2K.com presents AFN Live with Kevin Drake.
They've brought it back, and they've actually done really good, even though their record is 2-2.
Michael Washington Weeks.
I think Los Angeles might be one of those, hotbed, quote-unquote, coaches. I think you'll see a veteran coach in St. Louis to try to bring in the crowd.
Coach Lynn Hart Jr.
Feel each other out, so to speak, and stick with the run game and find plays that work.
John Turner.
He was also Peyton Manning's offensive coordinator and quarterback coach over there in Indianapolis. And that Peyton Manning, he was pretty good too, I hear.
Welcome, everybody, to another Sunday night of AFN Live. As always, Kevin Drake with Michael Washington Weeks.
How we doing?
Oh, we're doing pretty good. Now, right now, we don't have John on. He might join us later. He's our resident White Walker. He watches Game of Thrones. I think tonight's the last episode. I think that he wants to watch that when it's live. And it's only gonna be me and Michael right now. If anyone else jumps on, we'll introduce them as fit. But we're gonna start out tonight with the XFL. I know we've started the past couple of weeks off with the XFL, but granted, they've been putting out a lot and a lot more. Interesting enough, we finally got the last coach of the XFL teams, XFL Houston, June Jones. Michael, what do you think about this?
First of all, I want to go on record and say I predicted this. It's a great fit. June Jones, with his ties to SMU and Houston, that air raid system that he was, so known for in Hawaii when he was there with Colt Brennan as the quarterback over there, and he moved over to SMU in Houston, and he had some success, but at a lower level. It's a great fit for what the XFL wants to do. The St. Louis and Los Angeles hirings were, a little bit of a surprise for me. But overall, I think that June Jones fits the overall mold. He's kind of a veteran coach, has been around the scene for a while, has had success at multiple Tiger Cats up in the CFL. The stats up there were fantastic as the offensive coordinator. Maybe head coach, actually. I'm not 100% sure which he was. But their offense was explosive underneath him. So this will give, the XFL another advantage over the AAF for what they want to do with their style of play. The AAF really kind of wanted to do more of like the NFL approach to it. The XFL is kind of like trying to find a good happy medium between college and the NFL. And I think having coaches like Bob Stoops and June Jones there is going to really kind of like bridge that gap.
Definitely. And an hour ago, it actually broke that Kevin Gilbride has named Jim Herman the defensive coordinator of XFL New York.
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest things that we're seeing with a lot of these coordinators being signed with these head coaches is the relationship building, between a lot of these coaches, the connections that they've had. So the building of those relationships that they've had from all the coaching circles that they've been in, they're getting a chance now to really showcase an opportunity for these guys that they may not have gotten at the next level or the NFL level. So I'm excited to see how this is going to pan out, what the defensive rules are going to be, what the offensive rules are going to be. I know that the XFL wants to, kind of bring that explosiveness for offensive scoring, but at the same time, they want to keep the bread and butter of what football is about. So I suspect that the rules won't lean too heavily into the offensive mind's favor. So it'll be interesting to see what Gilbride and Herman can do there in New York for sure.
Definitely. I'm looking at all of this, and I'm thinking about the NFL, and I'm looking at what they've done. And then we have some of this stuff at the XFL that is being practiced with the Spring League because they have that partnership. And it's going to be interesting to see what rules they do bring out for both offensive and defensive side of it, because right now in the NFL, offense is very heavy. Quarterbacks are throwing nonstop. The receivers and running backs are getting faster and they're gaining yards like no other. Defense is kind of lacking in a sense. Defensive linemen are getting more agile and athletic and are able to break through the line to be able to sack a lot more, and corners are becoming more cover corners and tackling. So a lot of receivers catch the ball and they can get a couple extra yards before they're actually taken down. So it's going to be interesting to see how the XFL actually brings that about and thinks of how they're going to pursue everything and make it both even on both sides.
Yeah, I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a integral balance between the offensive rule book and the defensive rule book. I think you're going to need the thing that's lacking in the NFL right now is like you said, it's really offsetted, in the favor of the offense. You can't touch the quarterback basically without getting a penalty. There's 4,000 different types of penalties in the secondary, except for if you're the New Orleans Saints.
It's the truth.
But a 5-yard holding penalty in the NFL in the secondary results in automatic first down. I don't understand how that makes any damn sense to me. The NFL, they felt that they needed to get more scoring, so they kind of adopted or modified a little bit of the arena football rules to open it up a little bit, and it's resulted in something that's not the NFL that a lot of people like. Now, for generations below me, below you, it's the only football that they'll ever know. But for the majority of the generations that are alive today that still watch the NFL, and make no mistake, the NFL is not hurting. All these people saying, "Oh, I'm not watching the NFL," it's not hurting. It's just the XFL is going to give it an opportunity to be an alternative spring version of a good mix of what makes the college game great and what makes NFL great. And that's what I think XFL is going to try to bridge the gap to.
Exactly. And you're talking about penalties in the secondary. I mean, if Troy Polamalu was in the league right now, he'd be penalized every play.
Well, I mean, Brandon Browner, he was a pass interference call away from ruining a game. The older guys, I mean, really, if Deion Sanders played in today, and Deion Sanders is one of the greatest cornerbacks of all time, and if Deion Sanders played today, Deion Sanders would probably be untouchable because this playing style, these rules would fit right into his playing style perfectly. I mean, he didn't like to tackle. He wasn't really handsy. He was a ball hawk. So, I mean, this would fit perfectly into him, and he would never get a penalty, and he would be a shutdown corner in the truest sense. But, the other corners of, like, the great time, Darryl Green, the great Washington Redskins cornerback, he probably would have struggled a little bit more in today's game because he was a little more physical. Even though he had all that speed, he was still very physical of a corner. So, the XFL is going to find a balance here. I really, honestly, truly believe that because I think Vince McMahon likes the hard-hitting aspect of it. I mean, it's a violent game. I mean, let's make no mistake about it. When you play football, you know what you're signing up for. And I understand that player safety is very important. Trust me, I am a big advocate for player safety. But without making football too soft of a game or to making it to a point where it's two-hand touch, you have to find a balance. And those are some of the risks that you take when you play a game this violent. When you go into MMA and train and fight MMA your whole life, there's a good chance you're going to get concussed. I mean, if you don't get concussed, you're a pretty damn good fighter, but there's a good chance that you're going to get concussed. Exactly. The NFL's similar. These players don't grow up from the age of 5 wanting to be an NFL player, working their tail off to become an NFL player, to go, oh my God, I got concussed. I can't believe I have a concussion. Like, that's just not how that works. Like they understand the risk, and it's up to you whether or not you want to continue playing.
Exactly, and I think that's the one big issue when it came out that they were going to look into concussions, they were going to look into the brain activity, they were going to look into better helmets, which they've done. The helmet structures are a lot better than what they've ever been, but it's more to that. You fall down, you get tackled hard enough or even slightly, and you fall on your back, your head's going to hit the ground with that helmet, and your brain's going to get rattled. No matter how much padding and how much safety is in that helmet, there's still a chance that you're going to get concussed. And I think that's the issue that not many people really want to acknowledge, is the fact that injuries are more common with safety than they are without. A lot of injuries come from like that shouldn't have happened. It was safe, but it still happened, and that's what people just don't want to acknowledge and agree with.
I think the biggest reason why the NFL came under fire with the concussion aspect of it is because they tried sweeping it under the rug.
I mean, fair.
Brett Favre, how many times has Brett Favre admitted that, he was concussed in a game and doesn't remember throwing a touchdown? I mean, that's scary. But, like you said, the helmets have been gotten better. The mouth guards have gotten better. They found a way to form a mouth guard to make it more form-fitting to help protect the head, the mouth from opening, because it's most of the time when your mouth opens or your mouth guard isn't fitting properly, a lot of that can be prevented from the mouth guard. It's just one of those situations where, concussions were down 26% from last year. I mean, that's an NFL number. I don't know if that's the actual number, but that was an NFL number. So if that number is accurate, I mean, that's great strides towards player safety. But look what they had to do to change it. The hard hits over the middle as a receiver. I mean, you basically can't do it anymore. Leading with the helmet, which is something that I've never understood why anybody leads with the helmet anyways. But a lot of these quote unquote helmet-to-helmet contacts, you have to be more aware of where your helmet is. Because even if it's a player going down and you were going after the midsection when they were standing up and your helmets collide, it's a helmet-to-helmet. So no kickoffs, no kick returns anymore, because that was one of the biggest areas where concussions happen. So they've sacrificed certain portions of the game to make it safer, but at the cost of several thousand fans.
Exactly. I mean, even the XFL, they're keeping kickoffs around, but there's a 5-yard gap that you have to stay by, even with the punt returns. You actually have to give the receiver a few yards to breathe so they can actually return it. There's not going to be any kneel downs or anything. They actually are going to have the opportunity to return. And I think that's the issue with the NFL, is that the reason we don't see many returns and the people want the kickoff and punts to be removed is the fact that most defenders get to the ball carrier way before the ball gets to them, and they have to call for a fair catch. So the XFL is doing a good thing. It's like, hey, give them 5-yard breathing room, let them run, and then go after them. Because that'll bring a lot more excitement and a lot more fun to the game to watch overall.
Well, I mean, think about kickoffs and punt returns anyways. I mean, is there a more exciting play in in football? Anytime you see a kick return go for a touchdown or a punt return go for a touchdown, the crowd is on its feet. You hear the roar of the crowd, come through the TV like it's in your living room.
Exactly.
It's an exciting play. It's part of football, and I know that the NFL wants to, do this and that and player safety. And like I said, I'm a very big advocate for player safety, but at the same time, it's a violent sport. You're going into a violent sport knowing it's a violent sport. You can do the Chris Borland route, the linebacker for the 49ers. He was a stud for a rookie year, but he got concussed. It was his third concussion in 4 years. He decided to step away from the game. Completely understandable. Nobody's going to ever once say, oh, you shouldn't have stepped away from the game. It's unfortunate that he did, but that's part of what football's about. And concussions are, any injury really. Concussions, knee injuries, ankle injuries, arm injuries, it's all part of a game, especially when it's violent. I mean, even a non-violent sport like baseball, and these guys have surgeries, just as much as football players do. So
exactly,
it's the NFL has got some issues. I think the XFL is doing a very intelligent thing of trying to find a way to bridge the gap and keep player safety without altering the game too much. And Oliver Luck is, I can't praise Vince McMahon enough for putting Oliver Luck in the commissioner role, because he's gonna bring so much creativity to the game of football and so much creativity to the XFL. And you can see it with the coaches that he's put in place. He's got NFL experience with, Jonathan Hayes in St. Louis and Kevin Gilbride in New York. And then he's got the college, side of it with Bob Stoops in Dallas, and then, June Jones in Houston. And he's got a couple, he's got a young guy in Winston Moss in Los Angeles who has NFL experience, but not really a whole lot of head, coordinator or coaching experience type in a prominent role. So he's got some guys in certain situations that can end up being something, and it's going to be a good melting pot of saying, okay, we can do this and succeed. And I think June Jones just solidifies that even further, honestly.
It does, and I just want to make a point about player safety and injuries. The freaking NHL, they hard hit like no other, so don't give me that rule about they don't need to hit hard. I just want to throw that out there a little bit. NHL, they just knock each other left, right, and sideways into that glass, and it's fun. But looking at so now with June Jones and then the hire of the defensive coordinator in New York and everything for the XFL, with Oliver Luck, Vince McMahon really pushing to have an exact football league instead of what they had back in 2000, and everything all the steps they've taken, the changes in like front offices that we've seen, like the president in Los Angeles, she has a marketing background and everything, but not really a sports background. She's kind of different. What's the credibility looking like for the XFL right now? Because to me, I think the credibility is there. It's like they're here to be different. They're here to succeed and rival the NFL, in my opinion.
I think the credibility is there. I think the credibility was there from as soon as he hired Oliver Luck. You know, the thing with Vince, and one of the great things about Vince McMahon is Vince doesn't like to fail. Vince literally has a drive to get to a point where he wants every project that he puts his name on to succeed. And XFL 2000 or XFL 1999 or 2001, whatever you want to call it, he had a product that was in the process of succeeding. But the way he went about it, he was hoping to cross-promote. He was hoping to get WWE fans to come over to the XFL and watch the game, when wrestling fans and football fans don't always mix. You know, not everybody that's a football fan is a wrestling fan. Not everybody that's a wrestling fan is a football fan. The football fans outnumber wrestling fans. I think that's pretty safe to say. And Vince went about it the wrong way. And what happened was declining ratings. The quality of play suffered because it became really gimmicky. He wanted to put this quote-unquote extreme product out, and it ended up failing. And I think that 20 for 20 on ESPN really showcased a lot of how Vince feels. And make no mistake about it, Vince McMahon loves the game of football. And this time around, he wanted to do it right. He got a separate entertainment, so it's not necessarily, company. It's not produced by WWE. His name is tied to it only as an owner. He got Oliver Luck, who's a very well-respected, well-known, and highly, just respected, knowledgeable NFL football guy. Put him into commissioner status. Got some good name coaches to come on board. And he's giving an opportunity and chance to females in certain spots. The New York president, the Los Angeles president. He's giving guys who haven't had a chance, like Jonathan Hayes and Winston Moss, to showcase that they are hidden gems inside the football world. And the credibility of what Vince is putting together with Oliver Luck, this could very potentially be something more special than any XFL fan, any XFL doubter is expecting.
And it's the truth, because when it first got brought back, I mean, what was it? It was late last year when it first got brought up that Vince McMahon wanted to bring back the XFL. I laughed a little just because of the fact of what happened in 2000. But then I didn't hear anything about it, and then it showed that Oliver Luck was the commissioner, and I was just like, wait a minute, you're telling me Andrew Luck's father, someone who has very high expectations when it comes to things that he does, along with NFL experience, is your commissioner? That's when I started getting intrigued. That's when I started looking at this like, oh, I can't laugh anymore. This is a legitimate thing that Vince McMahon is trying to put together. Let's see what he does. And he's done a great job. He's taken all the backlash. He's taken the proper roads to get here. He's taken money where he thinks he needs more at, and he's pushed and pushed to have some of the best in the industry be a part of this league. along with having some up and comers in the president spots of these teams to be like, okay, we know you don't have the background in sports. We know you haven't done anything like this. We're giving you this opportunity. We're going to give you head coaches and GMs and coordinators that have experience that trumps yours by a tenfold. But we're going to have you in charge and making things right. And I think that's a good thing because he's putting a lot of trust in people that haven't done much as presidents, but giving them a lot of experience with their general managers and head coaches. And I can't wait to see how this league turns out because, if it does end up rivaling, we're going to have stadiums that are big. We're going to have a league that could expand into multiple with more teams, and we could see something happen that hasn't happened since the beginning of the NFL. And we would have two successful leagues, one trying to outdo the other. And in time, if the XFL keeps what they're doing and the NFL keeps going down the path they're going, I think the XFL could emerge as the top football league. But time will tell. This is early. We're not going to get the first look at the season until 2020. So I don't expect to see anything like them rivaling until probably 2030 if they're still around. If they succeed, I see everything going high for them.
I think that the biggest thing to take here with this XFL situation is make no mistake that the team presidents may not have the resumes, not all of them, may not have the resumes inside the sports world the way that most team presidents do. But
right.
A lot of the team presidents for each of these franchises is going to be designated for marketing.
Yes.
They're not necessarily going to be running the team. I mean, that's why the general manager and head coach are the same person, because this is going to give the opportunity for the head coach to stick to football, whereas the team president is going to be sticking to the marketing campaigns, the sales, the drive inside the communities. And I think that that's where the connection comes in. That's going to be fantastic for the XFL, and on top of it, they've done everything that's been calculating. And actually, to counteract what you said about how your first reaction was when the XFL was announced, I remember sitting with one of my buddies when the AAF was starting to get close. We were watching the quarterback protector pick draft, and I was like sitting here saying, like the AAF, the XFL, the NFL, like this could be really good. It's this time of year, this time, we can sustain 3 leagues if it's done properly. And he's like, oh, I wouldn't get too excited about the XFL. He was like, in part of my language here, but this is quote, that shit's not going to last. And I was like, well, I mean, like, I don't think Vince is going to relaunch the XFL and have it be the same. Like, he's really not happy that it failed. This same guy, after the 5th coach was announced in the XFL, was like, I'm starting to get excited. And it's because of everything the XFL has done has been methodical and calculated. I've mentioned it before. I'll mention it. I'll keep mentioning it until the season ends next year. Just everything that they have done has had a purpose. Everything that they have done is pinpointed for perfect timing in the sense of what it does with the NFL and the NFL schedule. Here, NFL, you can have your moment in the limelight. Oh, Tuesday morning, guess what? We have a new head coach. Don't forget, we're still here. So the XFL has made sure that they are getting maximum eyes on them with each and every announcement that is taking place. And it's going to continue through the rest of this offseason. Next month, teams, logos, and names, and probably the first date for the first draft will be announced, is what I'm suspecting.
And then, so there's been a lot of debate, and I've seen this across the Facebook group that we're a part of, a football world, and other Facebook groups that have talked about the XFL and their uniforms and logos. And when it comes down to it, we're not going to see logos until we see names, because I don't think the XFL is going to have XFL on the side of the helmet and then a team name. I think we're going to have what the NFL has, and the AAF, where we're going to have names and then logos for that name. And I don't think we see a logo until the name drops, or maybe they do it at the same time. If they do that, honestly, I'd be really, really, really hyped. But then you have these groups of people that are just like, okay, do they go with dark colors or do they go with lighter colors? Do they do white? Do they do black? Or like when a color scheme comes out, do they keep it dark? Do they keep it white? And I've seen most people, like I saw RJ, he ended up saying that he preferred the darker because it's more appeasing to him. And then some people are just like, I like the light uniforms because they fit better when it's a night game and the lights are on. When it comes down to it, I think it's up to the XFL to be like, look, this is our uniform, deal with it.
I think an announcement, just it has to just be a press release type thing. It doesn't have to be like a huge announcement, but an announcement of sorts about, which company is going to be providing their uniforms. I think that will give us a good idea, because with ESPN and Fox, that's going to bring, staying power to the XFL also. I mean, you talked about the validity and the reputation of the XFL and how much of it's sustainable, but striking a deal with Fox and ESPN is huge. That brings, reputation automatically. If these leagues see something in, if these major companies see something in the XFL, then there's something there worth looking at. So it would be interesting to see what's going to, happen with the uniforms and who's going to create them. I think you need a good balance. I don't think, darker colors and lighter colors and all that hoopla. I mean, I don't think that necessarily really truly matters if you can just put together a good, design and color combination. I felt that the AAF, did a pretty good job for the most part, but the Atlanta Legends and the San Diego Fleet, when they played each other, they looked similar, even though their color schemes weren't close, just because of the design of the uniform, and they didn't have the white and the home color and the away colors. I think that the XFL will have away and home to make it a little more, to make sure that you can distinguish between the two. The San Antonio Commanders was probably one of the only uniforms that I had issues with in the AAF. The maroon and red, it didn't really strike me as cool, or it clashed. It didn't look good. But the rest of the uniforms I actually didn't have an issue with. So the XFL, if they were smart, they'd go out and try to land somebody that has name power in football and continues to want to put out different designs that the NFL isn't necessarily willing to necessarily go with. Because make no mistake about it, the NFL, I guarantee, gets different concept designs before games throughout the entire season.
Oh yeah, especially like the color rush uniforms that we all had.
Oh my god, I didn't mind the idea behind the color rush schemes, but it's never good to put the same color on top of the same color. It just does not look good.
I mean, the Texans, you had like a red number, and then it was all like dark blue. It's like
I don't know.
It's appealing in Madden, but not in real life.
But make no mistake, the NFL gets those concepts. So to try to find a company that could say, okay, this concept was rejected by the NFL. Maybe we can do something with this if we take this color and mix it with this color. That looks good. I don't think the bright colors, dark color argument, it's kind of a weird argument if you want my honest opinion, because the NFL has bright and dark colors and it works fine. So
I mean, the color rush for Seattle is literally neon green.
Well, just in general, I mean, they use neon green. The Dolphins have an orange.
God, I know, like the orange. Why would you go? No, wait, that's Denver, isn't it?
No, the Dolphins have like a creamsicle, not creamsicle.
Oh yeah,
like that orangey, or I don't know, Tropicana color, whatever you want to call it.
It's probably the funniest thing about you saying Tropicana. It's the funniest thing.
Yeah. But but just saying in general, like they there's colors that are mixed like that. I mean, the NFL doesn't. It's not all just dark and drab, and good color combination, you can make it work. I thought the Arizona Hotshots had a decent bright colored uniform, and I thought that I liked the hot shots. I thought they were good. And then the Orlando Apollos had that orange and the blue that was looked, pretty good. It went well. You just got to find a color scheme that works. You got to find a way that it matches and works it out and all that stuff. Like,
exactly, and that's why I kind of look at it as like we talked about this. I think probably the first 2-3 weeks into the show, I brought up the fact that that WWE and Vince McMahon, they have a lot of promos when it comes to commercials on USA or even commercials on the WWE network, that a lot of the wrestlers, superstars, they wear tap out gear. But then we also know that they have connections with Under Armour. So when we know Under Armour, they do a lot of things with the NFL when it comes to cleats and gloves and stuff like that. But do you think Under Armour and Tap Out, if asked by the XFL and Vince McMahon, they could come together and bring something to the XFL in terms of uniforms that we probably never would see in the NFL?
No. And the reason I say no is because Tap Out was actually bought or brought underneath Vince McMahon's umbrella to actually rival Under Armour. I do not believe that Vince McMahon, upon the rest of my research, because after we had talked about that, there was something that didn't sit right with me. And we all talked about how Under Armour could do this and Under Armour could do that. Because Under Armour, really, honestly speaking, Under Armour would probably be a good company to have a relationship with inside the football world to design uniforms and stuff. But Tap Out was literally bought or brought underneath the Vince McMahon umbrella as a rival to Under Armour, at least upon all the research that I've had. Unless I missed something somewhere when I was doing this. I don't believe that we'll see something as a joint effort between Tap Out and Under Armour, but it's Vince McMahon, so who the hell knows? And I could probably be wrong and eat my own words here in 3 weeks' time, and it could be Under Armour and Tap Out. I'm thinking that with Starter out of the game in AAF, with Nike being the exclusive to the NFL, we could see maybe Starter get involved. I know that Riddle, they do the helmets. I don't know if they dabble in uniforms. There's a possibility there. Reebok. Adidas, maybe. So
I wouldn't mind seeing Adidas because they put out more foot apparel than they do clothing. So I would love to see them put,
don't they?
Soccer uniforms, yeah, like I said.
I would say they do MLS uniforms, don't they?
Yeah, but I would love to see them do a variation for football, just because soccer, even though some of the teams do have nice uniforms, they're more bland than anything. And nothing against the MLS, because good companies, good organizations, but honestly, yeah. I almost worked for Orlando City, but it's okay. But I think that seeing Adidas put out uniforms for football and to see what we could get from them, I think it would be a lot better for them just financially, because I think a lot more people would be interested in seeing a different color variation, a different scheme set from what they do with MLS to football, and I think that Adidas would be a great fit, in my opinion.
I like the idea of Adidas. I just don't. I don't know where Vince is going to go with this. I don't know what he could try to probably strike a deal with Nike of sorts, for all I know.
Honestly,
knowing Vince, who knows what it could be. Tap Out. He could take his company and Tap Out and say, hey, guess what, guys? We're going to start designing football uniforms, and the guys will probably have their heads scratching, going, we develop T-shirts and jock straps. I don't know what to do here. So
that's fair. That is so fair.
But you know how Vince is and what Vince does, so Vince could turn around and maybe even start getting Tap Out to do this. I think the more important part isn't necessarily the color schemes as much as it is going to be the team names. It concerns me seeing these fans on our group talking about how they want the New York Hitmen back and the
Please God, no.
Los Angeles Extreme or whatever it was. And it's like, guys, we got to think about this realistically here, because even though there's an X in the XFL, it's not going to stand for extreme. If anything, it's going to probably end up standing for something like extraordinary. You know, like it could stand for nothing. It could literally just be X Football League. So I don't want to see names like that. I'm sorry. For what the XFL was in 2000, fine, cool. Do whatever it is you want to do with that. But you need to bring legitimacy. You know, you can't have names that are too far outside the realm of possibilities, but you can't have names that are just going to be like laughable. You know, you literally, nobody's going to take their kids to go see the Houston axe murderers or something. They're like, it's just not gonna...
I'd go see that. I'd take my kids to watch that.
Well, yeah, but Kevin, you're not your typical parent. I don't even think you are a parent, but still, you're not a typical parent.
Honestly, when it comes to Houston, I think, just biased because I'm from Houston and I'm going to watch this team, I would think, honestly, we have the Houston Texans, Astros, Rockets, Dynamos. Let's make it the Houston Rodeo, honestly.
I was trying to think of something to deal with their space program, which is obviously going to be very typical and, whatever. I know Houston's known for a lot more than just that, but I don't know. I threw my names out there for the most part as far as what I would like to see for some of these teams. Houston. I wish Apollos, hadn't been used in Orlando.
Because Houston Apollos would be appealing.
I like that a lot. I just don't. I don't know where else you could go with Houston yet. I just don't want to see something like I just don't want to see the Dallas Outlaws. Like, it's just so boring.
Dallas Outlaws, Houston Outlaws, San Antonio Outlaws.
It's so boring.
It really is.
Oh my God, it's just so boring. Like, just be more creative. I don't want to see the Dallas Desperados either. It's just that whole. Just give me something, that's creative, but not so far out of left field that I laugh every time I'm gonna go watch a game. I don't know, like the New York Mafia. Oh, okay, I don't want to hear
honestly,
that.
if it's gonna be the New York Mafia, you better have Al Pacino come out there and be like, talking to me.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you're gonna have the Italian mafia run the football. Just ignore all that and just give me something creative, but not so far out of left field that I'm laughing, so hard that I can't watch the game, type of thing.
Exactly. And I also want to bring up the XFL actually dropped a list of dates, and basically they are tryout dates for each team. I know personally, I'm going to do it. I'm actually going to go out on the 8th of June, and I'm going to try out for the XFL Houston team just to see what they're doing there, just to see what it's all going to be about, and just try, just for the fun of it,
Hey.
Research. Let's do it.
Yeah, hey, go do you, man. Go do you. Well, I know everybody here at AFNN is definitely going to be pulling for you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. But they did drop a lot of dates. I don't have it up with me right now, but they dropped, I believe, 8 or 16 breaks or 16 dates to get people out there to try out, because we all know the draft's coming up in a player pool that they have ready to go. So this is just going to get people that can't actually apply online and get in on the draft to come out there and show what they got to see if they can make it. But that's going to do it for now. We're going to take a little bit of a break and come right back. So stay tuned and we'll return.
The Alternative Football News Network.
Welcome, John.
John,
Okay. Hello, how do you do?
So I heard that this episode's a joke.
It's
Did you cry?
no, I didn't. It was better than the previous 2 episodes where it wasn't the ideal ending that I would have wrote. Something similar, but not quite.
All right. You guys got about 45 seconds. You got 45 seconds here. 30.
Go ahead.
30 seconds here.
Okay.
Outside on Arena Football. But for the best in indoor football talk, this is the
After
place.
this station ID.
AFT Buzz, presented by Arena Football Talk. Friday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, only on AFN, the Alternative Football News Network. History in the making.
Welcome back, everybody. As always, still me, Kevin Drake, Michael Washington Weeks. But John Turner has joined us now. John, how's your night been?
Pretty good. Thank you very much for having me. How you guys doing?
Doing pretty good.
Doing well, John. Doing well. Glad you're here.
Doing it well. Represent
Now-
Queens. She was raised up in Brooklyn.
Thank you, LL. Appreciate that.
So, how'd you feel about the Game of Thrones episode?
Game of Thrones, spoiler alert, was ended tonight, and it did not end at a diner, cutting to a Journey song and black screen. I will spoil that much. Culmination of 8 seasons. I guess it had to end some way, and it ended the way it did. I'm not going to share spoilers here, but I will say that I kind of predicted a little bit of a, the author. I know this is a football show here. The author for a long time, and by the way, I started reading these books in high school. Nerd alert. And that was about at least a decade before this show came about. The idea of the author, often, drew a lot of, this from the War of the Roses history, as well as his readings of Lord of the Rings novels, the Silmarillion, Hobbit series. Oh my God, I can't remember that guy's writer right now off the top of my mind, but. He always wanted to know at the end of the third Lord of the Rings book, what happens? Like, what kind of government did they form, and how did they get along with all these orgs and weird-looking people that don't speak English and stuff?
It's basically DC, isn't it, John?
Yeah, pretty much. It's like, how did DC and Baltimore get along at the end? But no, there was a little bit of a government system laid down in place there at the end, a little flash forward type. And I guess that was good enough for me. You can't, that's like, hey man, we didn't get Drew Brees versus Tom Brady, in the Super Bowl, but,
Thanks,
but Tom Brady still got to raise the Lombardi nonetheless. And I'm sure the rest of the world lived to play another down. So, that's the gist of, not to say that Tom Brady won the Game of Thrones tonight, but
So on a scale from 1 to 10, John, how satisfactory is the ending compared to the overall makeup of what the 8 seasons built?
Yeah, I get the question. I will give the show, the show.
Just the ending. The ending in comparison to where the show was building. Like,
I get it.
What was the satisfaction level on that?
If 10 is perfect, if 10 is anything that Tom Hanks has ever been involved in, and 1 is like anything involving who's the guy from Mad About You, Paul Reiser. Okay, Paul. one being Paul Reiser, 10 being Tom Hanks. I've always given the show about a 9.5. Okay, it's really hard to be a 10. For me. All right. But, this season and the ending of this season is a 7.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It had that, True Blood Dexter drop off for me. And it ended, without it being an open ending, of course. They didn't leave us completely hanging. Like, did Tony Soprano get killed in the diner or what? We never really happened to see what the prisoners of Oz, what happens to them in the new prison that they get shipped off to. because the anthrax drops in the mailroom, in that final episode.
We unfortunately did see what happened at Lost, though, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Lost, believe it or not, I belong to a Lost group. Of course I do. And
Lost, John?
We talk about the finale of Lost. I mean, at least it comes up multiple times a month, and I participate in those discussions still to this very day. And it's been at least 8-9 years, 10, 11 years.
I want J.J. Abrams to reboot it and just make it better.
Dude, J.J. wants to reboot so much, it's unreal.
I believe he's legally changing his name to Reboot Abrams.
He literally had the first, in my opinion, the first 2 seasons at least, were just so brilliantly crafted. And I know that the viewership started losing it in season 3 because season 3 was kind of like just adding questions without really answering a lot. There was a lot of other things that he was introducing. And I know that wasn't all his fault because ABC had a lot going on with that. And ABC...
Thanks, Disney.
Yeah, it wasn't even Disney at the time.
Well, to keep this football related, Jack Shepard, our sweetheart spinal surgeon in Lost, he was a wide receiver in high school and college, and the Lost.
He's a Redskins fan, isn't he?
That's a good question. Out of all the Redskins celebrities that I am aware of, that is not one of them. If in fact that's true, but what happened with Lost, and Abrams will tell you, is they kind of had a general idea of where they wanted to take the show. And a couple things happened in season 3. And I know you just said some question marks popped up with some unexplained reason. Well, Ana Lucia, the girl Letty from Fast and the Furious, she caught a couple of DWIs in a row. And she was approached by the Fast and the Furious to reboot that series. And, of course, it made it geographically inconvenient to go from Hawaii to Southern California, New Mexico to film that part 4 of Fast and Furious. So she had to make a business decision, and she went with Fast and the Furious, which that was the movie, I believe, that the one before The Rock came on board and all that. And so we find out that her character wasn't really dead, but she became a recurring part-time character.
Oh no, that was the second one where The Rock was in when they found out she was
right. That was The Rock was part 5, but part 4 was the Mexican drug lords thing, and Dom finds out she's not really dead.
They went down to Mexico.
Yeah, they went down to Brazil because that's where
Brazil.
Dom and
that's
Brian
part 5.
go.
Brazil is part 5. The Mexican drug lord, driving through the mountain.
That's right. They had the cave run in 4.
Yeah, cave.
Yeah, that was 4.
Yeah, that was 4. And that's the one where Letty came back.
Wait a minute. Okay, so wait a minute. Is 4? Are we counting Tokyo Drift in there?
Tokyo
as 3?
Drift. Okay. It counts as far as how many movies there have been. But Tokyo Drift actually, in the reboot, Tokyo Drift became part 7, I believe. That's the time.
Yeah. But it was the third one.
Yeah.
Right.
We had the Fast and the Furious, Too Fast, Too Furious, Tokyo Drift, Fast and Furious, and then
needs to die.
Yeah, Fast 5. And we had
needs to die.
Fast 6. That's the second one with the Rocket, and that's where Letty returns. Furious 7, Fate of the Furious.
So 7 became Tokyo Drift because obviously that's where Han dies. You know what I mean?
Han.
Yeah, Han. Excuse me, Han. You say Han, I say Han, or vice versa. So Lost had their things, and then Mr. Echo, Adebisi from Oz, his wife kept calling the damn, when they're the studio, when they're trying to film, they're out in the jungle of Hawaii, and his parents were sick, his wife couldn't handle the children by herself, and then he started getting homesick, so they just kind of wrote him off the show. So they wrote him and Ana Lucia off the show, all like in shebango in 2 weeks, 3 episodes or something. Both of them got killed off. And then they had to do something with the only remaining
character, by the way.
And the only thing they had left was the Hurley's girlfriend. He just sat down, was going to have a picnic with her, and now they had to, Michael shot her.
Claire?
No. Hurley, Hugo's, the girlfriend from the back of the plane with Ana Lucia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the girlfriend. And turns out they were in a mental hospital together. All that.
Well, what I was getting at was not necessarily the behind the scenes stuff. It was more the storyline stuff that was happening in the season for season 3, because I know that ABC was, the decline ratings, viewership was losing. A lot of the complaints that were happening with the viewerships was that it was adding more questions to the storyline than it was answering stuff from season 2. And then it was just jumping back and forth too much. So ABC approached J.J. Abrams. Well, they were going to cancel the show. And ABC and J.J. Abrams met, and J.J. Abrams said, can we reduce the show order and to try to finish this? But the problem was J.J. Abrams and the writers had a vision for a beginning, a middle, and an end. With the order of the 22 episodes, or however many it was, the 22, 23, 24 episodes that they were getting called for, and they were trying to condense it now into 12? It was 12 episodes, or per season after that, or 13. So they had to cut a lot out, according to what I had read about J.J. Abrams, and it kind of left a little bit of it was kind of like a bittersweet. Like, they were able to tell a story, but it wasn't necessarily the story that they wanted to tell.
I like how we spent the first part of this after the break talking nothing but Game of Thrones, Fast and Furious, J.J. Abrams, and Lost. I love it.
I tried to keep it football related. Tormund Giants Bane would make a great rushing pass rusher. I think,
Mr. Echo would make a great linebacker.
Echo, what? I'm thinking Echo. That's strong.
He's a big dude. He could be a defensive end.
Strong
safety. Wolford big or what?
He's big.
Well, he's not very thick though. He's like, he's got the height, but he's not quite power forward. He's got that small forward build. So I mean, he's got to be back there in the secondary.
Have you seen him lately?
So
we're talking nice.
Well,
we're talking more LeBron than
now
Shaquille.
in that crock of poop movie Suicide Squad. I know that.
We're talking more LeBron than Shaquille O'Neal, right?
Closer to LeBron, I'd say, is his build, yeah, which would put him in the strong safety category, I'd think.
No, I would go with middle linebacker.
At 6'10"?
Middle linebacker.
Is he 6'10"?
LeBron's 6'10"?
Hold on. Does anybody know how to actually spell his name? Nobody knows.
No,
he doesn't even know. Let's see here. But, I'll try to see if he's on IMDb. Maybe it's got a height and weight thing, but I doubt it. Anyway, we talking about football still on this show? Because we can dive into Hollywood. I mean,
honestly, we went straight XFL. We could go to Hollywood if we wanted to.
Hey, got to do what you got to do.
We do got something on the slate here.
Can you, hold up.
What
here.
do you know about the CFL deal?
The CFL deal has got some, that thing's got some stuff with it. Now, I'm still learning. I mean, I think I could be a born-again Canadian, okay, and still not quite understand what a national is and these rules, so on and so forth. But what I've read a few different times, a rundown of the deal here, and what I gathered is for the league to try to keep some of the guys up north of the 49th and parallel, okay, and to keep them from running away to the XFL, they're trying to sweeten the deal for some of these American players and or internationals that are coming over by basically accelerating their ability to be considered a national player. So I believe if you're on a team for 3 years now, you sign a 3-year deal in the CFL, Joe Schmuckatelli leaves Rockville, Maryland, goes plays in Toronto, for example, 3 years, you're now considered a national, and your salary gets, hiked up quite a bit in order to sweeten that deal. And I believe year 4, if you spend year 4 there, then starting year 5, like it puts you in like that tier 1 paid category, which most Americans, or internationals for that matter, wouldn't qualify for. They try to save the big money for homegrown Canadian guys. But I think since a lot of their better players are in fact not Canadian, this is their way to, match up with XFL salaries, sweeten the pot a little bit for the players, keep a little bit more money to guys that have really given these Bo Levi Mitchells and Rileys and Duron Carters and stuff like that of the league that have been around and in the game and stuck around. They probably could have, come down and sat the bench or practice squad, around the NFL for a while, and they could probably play for the XFL. But they're household names up there up north, and this is a way for them to continue getting raises, stick around. And I think that's good for CFL fans. I think it's good for them as players. They've already established themselves up there. You know what I mean? And at certain point, some of them are a little long in the tooth. So why switch the game up now? You've been up there for X amount of years. Hell, the taxes are about the same in Canada as they are here in America. So, it's a way of keeping some of their players, keeping everybody from running away. I know that one of the big things with the league that was getting tired of was the 1-year deals. It's been a trend. Players are requesting 1-year deals as far as when they get to enter free agency. They don't want to sit around for 2-3 years on a contract, which are, them contracts tend to hold you hostage up there in Canada. But they've been a bit more nomadic, but we've also seen that trend in the NFL, a lot of prove it, show me deals and stuff like that. Usually it's guys coming off of injury or suspensions, or, they're on their second or third strike on the marijuana test or whatever the hell, and one more pop and they get, zapped for a year or something like that. So they sign these 1-year deals in the NFL. Well, they've been doing that up in the CFL too, but at a much higher rate. Veteran free agents. So I think they really wanted to kind of put the kibosh on that and make guys want to sign 2- and 3-year deals. I'm not positive if they got that done, but I know that was one of their big things. Let's see here. We got
So John, was this the original CBA deal that they agreed upon? Was it modified? And is it actually agreed upon? Because I read a thing supposedly from the internal organization of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers that was telling, players to not show up to the facilities. That kind of put into question whether the CBA was agreed upon. Right?
Yeah, it's so weird. It's like they had a tentative deal, and then all of a sudden, nope, strikes back on, and then 5 minutes later, never mind, we agree. And man, they got. There's some Tourette's or something going on up there, no offense, and I want to apologize if any of our listeners have Tourette's out there, it's not really what I meant, but they couldn't quite make up their mind, and then there was some, in the NFL, we hear this, such and such rookie, they're close on making a deal, even with the rookie wage scale in the NFL. It's just a matter of sorting out certain language in the contract. And then all of us, every time Dick and Harry, like you and I, we sit back and go, what the hell are they talking about? What language? Are they writing it in Chinese but Braille Russian? I mean, what are they talking about? So nobody knows what the secret language is, or they're going back to alien hieroglyphics, translated into, Hebrew or something. But
usually that surrounds usually when you hear stuff like that, as far as the language is concerned, it's surrounding the incentives,
right?
It's surrounding, like, they'll put in a thing saying, if you play 83% of the snaps, you can get an extra $5,000 bonus. And then the player will go, well, if I get hurt in a game and miss out, and it drops my percentage to 79%, so we have to put an injury clause. Like, that's usually the stuff that they're talking about as far as that's concerned. So I understand why players want that protection, but is that similar to what the CBA with the player side is?
I don't have all the answers for you. I mean, I'm trying to look at it right now and just
I just didn't know how much you knew about this, because I know it's been a very big popular amongst the our group, the Football World discussion group. So I didn't know how much you knew. I haven't unfortunately been able to really dive in too much into this. I have the baseline of stuff, but I didn't know if you knew if there was any modifications or anything done as that nature, if they did finally agree upon it, or stuff like that.
I'm looking at something from 3 Down Nation, and I think I sent this to you guys. What sticks out to me, a lot of people chalk up early season sloppy play in the NFL to, and guys getting hurt a lot more. Maybe, I don't know, looking at the analytics of it, but seems to be a lot more training camp, preseason. We saw Sean McVay not play a single starter all 4 preseason games last year. He said, I'm not playing any of my guys. I'll carry all 90. You allow me to carry them. That's who's going to get played. The bottom third of the 90 that ain't even going to make the team. That's who's playing in the preseason. I think that's the way to go. And to relate that into sloppy play at the beginning of the season, 2 CBAs ago in the NFL, the players really wanted less practice time, camp time, less days in pads. They don't want to work so hard no more. Let's just save the fight for the war field. You know what I mean? They wanted to, wait till they get in a game before they throw on helmets and shoulder pads more often, and then a whole lot less contact versus back in the 80s and, pre salary cap and free agency. Them guys are killing each other in practices and stuff like that, especially on rivalry week. So what I did see here, relate that into the CFL stuff is, it says here, changes to training camp made to reduce physical strain on players. That sounds a whole lot like what the NFL has been doing for 2 CBAs now. And I don't know how great that is for the game. I know it's great for potentially the longevity of the wear and tear on your body as far as the quality of play on the field is concerned. Like I said, man, we've seen some sloppy stuff early on in these last few NFL seasons. So, time will tell if the same toll is taken on the CFL. Evidently, the players must not have been able to have the ability to do this. They can now sign their own shoe endorsement contracts or their own shoe contracts. I'm guessing it was like a league level thing. League had their hands in it. Well, now if you're, say Johnny Manziel up in Montreal, Hamilton, what have you, and Under Armour wants to throw a pair of cleats on you, you can air a commercial, and the league doesn't really, dip into your pockets much. I'm assuming that's what that means. I've never seen a CFL player shoe commercial. I'm pretty sure if I had those networks or if I lived up there, I'd probably see some, but I can't tell you I have a whole lot of experience with that, but I'm sure they exist.
I want to ask, because I've seen multiple different articles and reports that the CFL is considering having each team have at least one foreign player on their team for the whole season.
Yeah, that's funny because I thought they already had 4. Okay, I know that there's 7 starters got to be Canadian national. Okay, 7 out of the 24 starters. All right, and then they have a rule of I believe there's 16 or 20 can be outside of Canadian, basically. It doesn't matter where you're from, just non-Canadian. And then 4 of them are considered reserves. I believe 4 of them can only play special teams or come in for a non-national player in reserve, which is really tricky. I mean, what if a Canadian starter gets hurt and then your other Canadian backup gets hurt? Now you're stuck with one of these non-Canadian guys. Like, what do? Run with 11? Run with 10? Because
you go to the local grocery store and find a bag.
Right. Somebody who's the toughest guy in the stands? Grab a helmet and shoulder pads.
That just sounds way too complicated. By the way, can I just throw that in? Just because it just I understand the CFL is trying to appeal to the Canadian fans and keep it as a Canadian football league, but that's just too much. It's too many parts trying to move there. That's just ridiculous.
It's crazy, and I wish a guy like if you go to Let's Talk CFL, there's Todd Maggi, Christopher Jones. These guys know, Bale, another guy. These guys know these rules inside out, and they are great to talk to about this stuff, and you can really get educated. All right, but I've read the rule 2 or 3 different times from 2 or 3 different sources. I still don't quite get it. But I thought 4 out of the 20 non-national players were international already. So I'm not exactly sure yet what this one roster spot means. Like, I guess he means he's uncuttable. He's like the franchise international player or what? I don't know. I don't really know what it means. And I'm guessing it means international non-American. I'm assuming, it means like Mexico or Europe or wherever, Asia, down under, but just not American, I'm assuming.
it just seems like complicated, man.
Because you got 16 to 20 it's so strange because you said 16 to 20 or whatever. Maybe obviously those numbers aren't, exact, but
And I believe
non-national, roster spots, but then you have 4 international. I mean, isn't technically a player from the United States considered international? I
mean, honestly, we're North America. They're North America.
I mean, is it just because it's in Northern America? So is it like a player from Mexico who wants to play in the Canadian Football League doesn't count as international, just counts as non-national?
Technically, guys, Kevin and Michael, isn't the language? Speaking of language, isn't the language of this rule? Doesn't it say global player?
Global. I mean, even global.
Right. Yeah. Right. Okay. So I think what their language means
flat, though,
with the word global, I think what they're trying to say is, international is like, it can be anywhere, but the global means like in the language of CFL 2.0, like with all these relationships that they're building with Italy and Mexico, France, I believe Austria might be in there, Germany. I'm not sure if England is one of them or not, but there's a cluster of about 11 countries that they've made, pacts with, and they're establishing drafts for and all that other stuff. And I think maybe you have to be in that cluster. It's like their NATO or their United Nations, package. And we're not in that club. We're not in that book club. America is, we're in our own book club, I'm guessing, is what the language means. If I were to be a guessing man, and really honestly, when it comes to these Canadians, all I can do is guess, I can tell you that they are very prideful of their game up there. They're very excited. The fans are that this deal did get done. One thing that I did see was an escalator in their contracts was if ratings improve, and hence the price of cocoa for advertisement goes up through whatever, ESPN Plus, HSN, I think is another network, carries our games, and ESPN2. Let's say, bigger companies come in and start buying, advertisement space and starts gaining more money for the league. That money gets forwarded on to the players. And I don't know whether they have a tiered system or what, as far as how that's worked out. But I do know that there's an opportunity. If ratings do improve, it'll mean, more money all the way around for the league and the players in the form of, I don't know how they figure that out, bonuses or what, you know what I mean? I don't know. And I think you're getting paid the following year for the previous year's results as far as that goes. I believe I read that somewhere, but hey, man, minimum wage for the league went up. I believe it went up. Let's see. I believe it went up about $15,000 for the bottom tier of the league, and that
minimum wage.
That's going up to basically match what the XFL's number is for their tier 4 bottom tier level player. So they didn't want to start, a new CBA. Having the bottom of their rosters making less than what the XFL is coming right out of the gate paying, that wouldn't be a very good look, because, who'd want to choose, less. That $15,000 we're talking about, 2 1996 Caprice Classics in fine condition with under 150,000 miles on them. So who'd give up that? Nobody.
Nobody at all, honestly.
It was smart. It was smart for the CFL to raise their, that minimum wage tier 4, lower tier, whatever it may be, to rival the XFL, because with them both playing, I mean, I know the CFL usually plays through the summer, and the XFL is going to be, more through the spring, but you don't want to risk the opportunity of, these XFL guys signing 3-year deals and the CFL losing their player pool and, all that stuff, especially like you said, the top half of the CFL, those guys don't, they don't want to lose those guys, to the XFL where they're going to get paid more money. So the CFL is going to have to rival. If the CFL wants to literally try to find a way to succeed in staying afloat or active or relevant, they're going to have to find a way to be able to compete with the XFL.
Here's a thought I had. Speaking of which, and not necessarily compete, because I know I've talked about this before. I think these leagues are going to help each other with ESPN being in the mix. I mean, ESPN, Disney coming down from high above. I was going to say, hey, I need you during XFL games. I need you guys to advertise for CFL because these seasons are going to run back to back. And I know that the XFL is going to keep guys tier ones. Are going to have 3-year deals, and the quarterbacks, of course, are going to have 3 or 4-year deals exclusive to the XFL. They're going to ask them not to play in the NFL, even if they really, really want to. Once you sign for the XFL, if you're a quarterback or tier one, they're going to expect you to stick around and be a company man for the XFL. What I am wondering is these tier 3s and 4s in the XFL, since their season is going to end at the end of April. And the CFL starts essentially, preseason starts Memorial Day weekend, and then the Grey Cup is like Thanksgiving weekend. Okay. Do you think that the bottom tier guys, tier 3, tier 4 players could play in the XFL since they're only signing 1-year deals? That Oliver Luck has told us a few times. Those guys are going to be 1-year deals, and we will, spice up, maybe a little bonus if they decide to come back. If we want to have them back and they want to come back, we'll throw a little cherry on top. But do you think a way to kind of to help both leagues, you'd pray these guys can stay healthy for, get this, back-to-back football seasons on a 1-year deal? Do you think a player X can play for Washington, D.C. XFL team and then a month and a half later show up and be playing for the Toronto Argonauts? On another 1-year deal, and then come on back by the time the Grey Cup is ending, and hell, 2 more months later, it's going to be training camp time. 3 months later, it's going to be training camp time again for XFL, and they're going to be back down in Texas for the spring league and so on.
Well, I think to kind of counter that, John, I think that it would be very interesting to see how that happens. Because you got to figure the XFL season is going to end early enough for some of these players to try to catch on with NFL teams.
Right.
So then you're gonna see them cut in the NFL season or not make the roster or whatever it may be, and then the XFL is going to be holding their next round of whether it's a tryout or a draft or whatever it is. It's going to be smack dab in the middle of the CFL season. I think you might see some players make that jump up north, but I think that any of those players at the bottom of the XFL rosters that end out their contract are going to probably stay local and try to hold on, whether they're going to train a full year the following year to sign a free agent contract with an XFL team, or they're going to try to latch on to an NFL team somewhere, go up, just get the coaching, get the experience, try to see if their skills improved or if they made any type of improvement. And then if they don't, train again for the XFL and start preparing for the XFL season.
I can agree to that. I just think it's a potentially interesting dynamic that could happen. You know what I mean? I always love thinking about things that could happen. It's almost better than reality, right?
Oh, like your mega merger.
Like what if I had that $10 million, man? It'd be a lot cooler if I did.
It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
It's much cooler to think about having 10 million and what I do with it than to actually, look at how broke I actually am. So, so thinking about these players bouncing around, and it's like, oh yeah, that guy, wow, he's playing up north now, and yeah, he says he's going to go back down to XFL in the spring again. That sounds pretty cool. So that sounds like something that would make me want to definitely tune in to both leagues in a row. Okay, and now keep in mind, I'm only talking about the bottom of the rosters. Now we just watched the Alliance of American Football, play all 8 fabulous weeks of football here, but remember, or was it 7? Remember now that some of their best players have now been signed up for tryouts with NFL teams, and half of them guys have already been cut. We saw Silvers get the axe by who? Philadelphia. about a week ago or something
The
like
Jets.
that. The Jets. Okay, the other green team that I can't stand.
The other green team.
Right. So.
Well, I think that's the biggest thing with this. When we're looking at the caliber of players and everything else, you see guys in the arena football leagues, they thrive in certain formats, and then they go somewhere else and they struggle a little bit because their play style doesn't fit or whatever it may be. The AAF was, we talked a little bit about this before you came on the show, John, that the AAF kind of molded their play style after the NFL. A lot more NFL adopted type rules, where the XFL, it appears they're going to be trying to, bring part of the NFL rulebook over, but also adopt some of the NCAA rules to try to help out the play style of this league, to try to make a little more of a unique blend of the two play styles, what makes the NCAA great and what makes the NFL great, and blend them together. The players in the CFL, they're top tier guys. Riley, quarterback, and Riley.
Yeah.
Is it Mike Riley? He's like what? He's like the Peyton Manning of CFL football right now.
Bo Levi said, "Hold my beer."
Yeah. Well, anyways, he's up there in the CFL, and
Riley is the highest paid. He's
the highest paid, whatever. Yeah, he's made a great name for himself at the CFL level. But what's the correlation of him being on an NFL roster or even in the XFL? Like, could he? Does he fit better with the CFL style? Could he start
games for the Redskins last year? I can tell you that much.
Well, I'm just wondering what the correlation is, and what the difference in play style and how it fits in strengths and weaknesses to certain players. Because we could say, well, football's football, but if the play style is different and you're being taught one way, and you're like, well, this makes sense to me, this clicks to me. It's kind of like a subject in school. Okay. You're like, I'm really good at English, but I suck at math.
Okay, so
I'm really good at the CFL, but I'm not good at the AAF. Or
whatever. When you said you were really good at English, I was expecting you to say you were bad at Spanish.
So here's a quick analogy. Somebody like Riley. All right, Riley would in the NFL, in my opinion, thrive in a true West Coast system. Okay, meaning 3 to 15 yard pass patterns. 3 to 20 tops, I'd say. He is not a deep ball thrower. He's a timing route guy. He uses the entire field. Keep in mind the CFL's got a bigger field to work with. But like I said, he's not a deep ball guy. He's not gonna throw 7-8 cannons down the field a game. That's not his style of game. He is a momentum and timing quarterback. I think he can certainly play in the NFL. If you watch, a few games of his, the guy's got Grey Cups, but if you go and watch, just go look at the schedules of these teams and look at high 20s, mid 30s scoring game where it's like, oh man, that looks like it was probably a good game. Let me watch that game. That you can go on YouTube and watch a lot of CFL games, unlike the NFL, who holds all their content hostage. You can never go back, archive, watch an old NFL game, right? You go to jail or something. But you will see this guy could play in the NFL now. Is he? Who's the guy that was the quarterback of the 2001 Ravens? Trent Dilfer. I mean, Trent Dilfer wasn't necessarily a West, Coast quarterback, but you get the idea. Field manager type guy.
But that's what I was getting at, John.
In a great system, like you were kind of alluding to. I was just giving you the system I think he could thrive in.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was kind of alluding to, though, is could he be a starter in the NFL? I mean, possibly. I mean, I think Garrett Gilbert could be a starter in the NFL, but here we are with Garrett Gilbert being behind, one of the up and coming, young stud quarterbacks in Baker Mayfield suddenly. He didn't get a chance with Miami to be a starter. He didn't sign in Carolina where he didn't go back to Carolina, I should say, where he's been part of for the last couple of years. And he didn't go back to the Rams when they were looking for a backup. They literally signed Blake Bortles. So I was just wondering, okay, Riley's the Peyton Manning of the CFL or the Tom Brady of the CFL or whatever you want to call him. Where would that put him in the NFL standards, though? Does that make him Teddy Bridgewater, or does that make him Sam Darnold or Josh McCown?
What do you think about when you think about the name Jeff Garcia? Okay, how good or what Madden rating would you give Jeff Garcia when he came into San Francisco and was kind of lighting it up over there? What did he have? He had Steve Mariucci, West Coast.
Yeah, but he also played behind Steve Young. What I'm getting at is
no. He came from the CFL.
I know he came from the CFL, but he was underneath Steve Young for at least a year.
Well, what would we say about Kurt Warner then?
Well, but that's what I'm saying, though. I mean, I understand that you can make an exception to the case for anybody. I mean, you can make the exception for when Warren Moon, came from the CFL and the USFL and hit the NFL and was, probably the most underrated and untalked, undiscussed greatest quarterback of all time, however you want to call it. And I understand there's an exception to the rule, but what's the percentage of it? That percentage can't be higher than 10%.
I'd say there's 3 quarterbacks in the CFL that could probably play at least an average, be right in the middle of the pack, somewhere between the 24th to the 12th, top 12 to 24, 12 to 26 quarterbacks in the NFL. In my opinion, I think there's 3 guys in the CFL that could
you think the 3 guys could end up inside the top 24 out of the 32 teams?
I'd say from 12 to 24. There's like somewhere in
they could be in the top half of the league.
No, the middle half.
Well, but the top half of the league would be 16 and above. So you think 3 of those guys could? You think 3 of those guys could finish between 12 and 16?
I think somewhere between number 13 and number 25 or something. I think there's 3 guys that could. I think it's Levi Mitchell, Riley, and there's another guy that I'm not thinking of right now. But
that's interesting.
And because look at the bottom third of the NFL. We're talking the guy that just got shipped from the Tyler Murray just replaced in Arizona. He's now in Miami. They're looking for.
But the thing with Rosen is the upside for Rosen is so much higher though.
Okay, but you really think Rosen is a better quarterback than Riley? I don't.
I do.
Okay, so the Redskins musical chairs quarterback. Let's see what happens with the young guy, Keenum, Alex Smith's knee, Colt McCoy. How many quarterbacks they got? They still got the guy from the AAF that saved their face at the end of the year.
Josh Johnson's not there, but they just drafted Dwayne Haskins. So
they've got the King's Landing King Council of quarterbacks over here in Washington, and that'll probably get them 8-8. All right, so what's happening in New York? They got a young guy and an old guy. Both of them is 8-8 in their finest hour this year. Buffalo, they're chasing their tails. Okay, so
I think Josh Allen's better than anybody in the CFL, though.
Maybe he doesn't win. Okay, so
he won more games last year than Buffalo won 2 years ago.
Oh, I guess what they win?
Nathan Peterman.
Were they 8-8 last year? Buffalo 9-7.
No, they were like 6-10. But
6-10. Oh my!
But they were on the up and up because of Josh Allen.
Oh God! When you're 6-10 and you're on the up and up, your franchise is in trouble. Okay. All right. But what my point is, the bottom third of the NFL quarterbacks are, let's not compare them to Tom Brady and Drew Brees.
But the problem is, the problem with this is, though, John, is the bottom third of the quarterbacks in the NFL. You're putting the young guys, the rookies in there. You're putting the guys that have, only had a year experience with an opportunity and chance. You don't know what their full potential is.
That's because the guys that were there last year were also in the bottom third of the NFL.
But what I'm saying is, though, is you're taking guys like Josh Rosen and you're saying, oh, Josh Rosen. I could sit here and spout off at least 2 or 3 different reasons as to why I think Josh Rosen's going to be a successful quarterback in the NFL. You said Josh Allen out there at Buffalo. Well, Josh Allen at Buffalo has only had 1 year under his belt. And they have to build a team around the guy. You can't just throw out and say, oh, Josh Allen sucks, he's awful. It's like Daniel Jones in New York. Like, this guy is literally getting torched already, and he hasn't even played it down in the NFL. Nobody even knows if this guy is going to be good.
Well, here's the
He
reality.
can easily bomb out, sure, but does that mean that Riley can come from the CFL and immediately turn heads in the NFL and be a top 15, top 16 quarterback?
I could think he'd be top 10 if you put him under Bill Belichick. Okay. But
Tom Brady didn't even finish in the top 10 underneath Belichick last year, though.
Yeah, well, he hoisted a big trophy at the end of the year. That's all.
Because they had Bill Belichick.
Yeah. But and here's another thing, though. It's like, all right, so Drew Rosen, yeah, maybe he's got a high ceiling, but he's on Miami.
Drew Rosen?
Rosen. Who's the guy in Miami now?
Josh Rosen?
Josh Rosen, whatever. Drew Rosen, Josh Rosen. I was thinking Drew Rosenhaus. Josh.
I thought you were talking about Drew Holiday for a little bit.
Whatever. Holiday, Rosen, these guys, they're all the same. But the guys on Miami, they've got one of the worst boneheaded owners in the league. I mean, they're just the Washington, they're the Dan Snyder South of owners. Okay, the guy brings in guys. He doesn't know how to keep guys. They're shipping guys all over the place, and they're somewhere in between 4-12 and 8-8. Okay, they're in that quagmire of chase the tail every year, just playing hungry hippos with Washington.
Oh, now we're talking about Kraft.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that, yes, they are still playing Tom Brady twice a year, so there's 2 losses. Every 3 years they seem to squeak out a win. Wildcat will get them a win here and there, and then A.J. Ajayi will bust loose for 3,000 yards in a game, and they'll win that one. But, that happens every once in a while. I grow facial hair more often than they beat the Patriots. So, what I'm trying to say is, like, a lot of these quarterbacks, these bottom thirds, they're on bottom third teams, and that bottom third team, 75% of them are going to be at the bottom third by the end of the year because that's what they are. That's what they do.
See, I don't think Derek Carr is the bottom third of a quarterback, and his team was awful.
I think honestly, they lightning in a bottle 2 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Oakland was a playoff team, and then he went down, and then the next year they had a bad year.
Same thing that happened with Carson Palmer in Cincinnati.
Yeah, but he got his rival in Arizona.
What I'm just getting at, what I'm saying is, though, is yes, you can make an exception for any individual person, but you go back to the Jeff Garcia days, you go back to the Warren Moon days, you go back to even the Kurt Warner days, and what's the difference now? The difference is there's more quarterbacks being looked at from smaller schools. How many quarterbacks inside that time frame were being drafted from colleges like Delaware, Miami of Ohio's, Appalachian States,
right?
The Wyomings of the world.
Here's a quick thing about Warren Moon.
These guys that were being drafted back then were guys that were being drafted from just the major schools because that's where only the coaches went to scout. They didn't go to the smaller schools because they were like, oh, well, this guy's at a smaller school. There's really no need to go check him out. Why do we need to go there? But at the same time, all of a sudden, you got guys like Jeff Garcia and Warren Moon. They're just coming in from, oh, this guy played really well at the CFL. Let's bring him in for competition. And they don't have a competition. And it's like, oh, well, okay, this guy from Alabama actually sucks as a quarterback. This guy from USC is not very good. This guy from Washington must be the system. And you're like all of a sudden going like this. But now you have guys like the Flaccos of the world from Delaware, the Ben Roethlisbergers of the world from Miami of Ohio. Hell, even Peyton Manning from Tennessee. It's not like Tennessee pumps out quarterbacks on a consistent basis. So there is a difference here as far as the way that the process has gone inside the NFL. I firmly believe that, the 3 guys in the CFL are really good quarterbacks and they would have a chance to stick at the NFL. But I don't know how their correlation would be as starters at the NFL. I think that they would very much be bottom 3 tier.
They would have to land, okay, fine, bottom 3 tier. But look, like, again, we can list off the bottom 3 guys again, and then we can create an argue pro or con whether or not a guy should have a job in the National Football League. But here's an interesting thing. You brought up Warren Moon, and it got me to thinking the run and shoot offense, Houston, Buddy Ryan, our boy that just got hired, XFL New York, wasn't he his offensive coordinator? Isn't that the reason he got punched in the face by Buddy Ryan for some call that Buddy didn't like? And wasn't Warren Moon that quarterback? I think that these systems that can help you be successful are these innovative offensive systems in the National Football League that kind of cater towards your strengths. So we had Mariucci, very, born and raised under Bill Walsh's system, West Coast as it gets, considering Bill Walsh invented it. Okay, like Dick LeBeau invented the 3-4 zone blitz. So it's interesting to know that it's Kevin McBride. Is that his name?
Kevin Gilbride.
Kevin Gilbride. I can't pronounce it.
Okay, you said Kevin McBride, and I thought about me with
Kevin
my grandparents'
McBride.
last name.
I ain't
My
trying to be
grandparents' last name, I lost it.
Kevin McBride.
I lost it. I was just like, wait a minute, when did I change my last name? I didn't legally do that yet.
I'm thinking Kenny Powers. But look, Kevin Gilbride, okay? I believe he was Warren Moon's offensive coordinator down there in Houston. Now, that's a wide open, almost like fun and gun type, offense that, had Moon playing to his strengths, much like Garcia was put in a position to play to his strengths under Mariucci. Okay, so now we're getting Tressman, guy that's worked with a lot of quarterbacks in his days. I mean, hell, he had Dan Marino in that 1984 season where he threw a bajillion yards. That was his offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, was Tressman. And now he's going to get a chance to work with some quarterbacks. We got June Jones in Dallas, Stoops, and now his new offensive coordinator, Hume.
Stoops is in Dallas. June Jones is in Houston.
Versus Visa. Okay, so we got them guys where they are. What do you guys think about? Did we ever bring this up? How about our guy that played? They let him go in the middle of the season last year in Arizona. Drafted, went to Oklahoma.
Sam Bradford.
Bradford. Now I noticed his name was still kind of out there.
No, he's done.
He's done.
Yeah, Bradford's done. There's too many injuries with that little kid.
He's literally got He's literally got bone on bone in his knee.
There's no cartilage there.
The Arizona Cardinals did an X-ray on his knee after he got hurt last year when Rosen came in, and they literally couldn't diagnose what was wrong with his knee because the scar tissue was too much.
But what's the half metal guy on DC comic movies?
Cyborg.
Can't they just kind of like make
AKA Sam Bradford?
No. Actually, Sam Bradford would be Christopher Nolan's on The Dark Knight Rises, Christian Bale's knee with no cartilage.
Or he can be like Ultron on Avengers. You know what I mean? It's kind of.
I think the biggest thing is, John, is what I was getting at more than anything with this is I think that the CFL quarterbacks could make the jump to the XFL, and I think they would succeed a lot more.
Well, they would
because you think about the West Coast offense. You think about the fun and gun. You think about the air raid system. The NFL hasn't. These offenses no longer take the NFL by surprise. I mean, RG3's little option run, the RPO, the read pass option, which has pretty much taken over the NFL now, isn't nearly as successful as it was when RG3 was doing it because the league caught up. It's what the NFL has always done. But when you have rules that play certain to strengths certain advantages, and when you have a melding of those rules, like I think the XFL is going to do, the CFL guys could come down to the XFL, and I think that they would thrive. Mike Riley could easily be a top guy in the CFL and the top guy in the XFL. But when it comes to the NFL side of things, because as you mentioned with the AAF guys, the top guys from the AAF, they made it to the NFL and they get cut. The XFL and the CFL will probably have a better chance to rival each other, which is why I said to the original point, it was smart for the CFL to raise that minimum wage type thing to try to compete with the XFL in that sense, so they don't lose those top tier guys to XFL.
Well, I agree.
They aren't going to lose those guys to the NFL, in my opinion.
And
that's a whole different story there.
And I think both of these leagues, CFL being the first one, with this new CBA, I believe they're sweetening the pot for guys that want to stick around beyond 1 3-year contract. Okay. So I think the CFL is going to have, when next year, 2020, first of all, let's all be grateful. We're getting we're getting a full complete season of CFL football this year. I'm going to watch as much of it as I possibly can and really dive into the league. And I'm going to attend some games. But next year, when they're playing one after another, it is going to be very interesting to see if the XFL is going to start implementing some of these same type of contractual things to their players, or are they just going to stick with the system for 3 full years to kind of, because that's what Vince McMahon says he is definitely committed to, is 3 full seasons. Okay.
I think for them that they're going to have to commit for at least a 3-year deal in the contracts, at least for the top guys. 3 years is going to be the determining breaking point for the XFL. If they're not making money after 3 years and it's not thriving after a 3-year period, that's when you're going to start seeing a lot of the maneuverings and stuff for them. But I think in 3 years the XFL is going to grow, so you can start seeing some of those 5-year, 6-year contracts. But I think that 3-year mark is legit what they're going to have to stick to.
And I think that's what I was saying for the Alliance of American Football. I think they're going to reevaluate their system after 3 years. Well, they only made 7-8 games, but there's neither here nor there. I do believe that, and maybe this is something that we can, question here, is how many of these top tier multi-year players do we think there will be per team? I mean, obviously we can't have half the roster be considered top tier. That's pretty top heavy financially. Oliver Luck said that he thought the Alliance was paying not enough at the top of their rosters and too much at the bottom of their rosters. A punter shouldn't make as much as, Gilbert. Okay, I get it. Richardson should be making more than the kicker. All right, unless you're Seabass. But
he probably should have made more than Luis Perez, honestly.
If there was a first, second, and third financial prize, Trent Richardson should have been up there in the top 3. But
what's the roster sizes, John?
46 players. 46 players. It's identical to the CFL. 40.
Okay, so ideally, I think what they want to do is at least one player for the tier 1. I think that you have to stick to just one player, and I think that's going to be the quarterback position.
I don't even think that player is going to be considered tier 1. I think that's going to be your starting quarterback.
Well, that's what I mean. I think it's going to be your starting quarterback. I think it's going to be called the tier 1 guy. It's going to be the face of the franchise. It's going to be the guy that's going to go out and do a lot of the marketing stuff with the team presidents. I think the tier 2 is going to be 3 to 5 players. Because let's face it, you have to build around something. You have to have weapons. You have to build around your quarterback. You have to have the weapons. And that 3 to 5 tier, players for tier 2, those guys are going to have to get locked up for 3 years. I think your top 2 tiers are going to have to get locked up for 3 years. That gives you up to 6 starters on an 11-man team. 11-man, on both sides of the ball. It gives you 6 overall that you can spread out.
That's a good number. 4 or 5 is a good number to have 3 guys on the side of the ball.
Your tier 3 guys are going to be guys that are probably going to be 2-year contracts. I think that that's probably going to range further to like the 10 to 20 range, give or take, whatever it is. And then your tier 1's going to be the rest of the league. It's going to be the guys that are going to make up your special teams for what you want to do with your special team. They're going to make up the practice squads. They're going to make up they're going to make up the filler for backups and everything else. But I think that your top 2 tiers are going to be the guys that they're going to be considered their stars for each franchise. And it's going to be the main vocal point for what they want to pay. And your tier 3 guys are going to be starters, but they're going to be guys that can be interchangeable. They're going to be guys that can be replaced the next year. And, and your tier 4 guys are going to be the guys that, come in on the backups and all that stuff. The guys from like Northwest Valley State, the guys from, Delaware University or Delaware State.
If I just get in.
Or Kevin Drake from AFN University, something along those lines.
So Kevin Drake from, right now we're looking behind the scenes over here at Casa del Turner. We are actually going to look up what the average tiered structure per team looks like in the CFL, because I have a feeling that the same amount of players, tiered level players, as far as contracts are concerned in the CFL there are per team. I have a feeling the XFL is going to kind of duplicate that. Okay, so because remember, Vinnie Mac tried to buy the CFL. So there's a lot about the league, obviously, that he likes. They've managed to stay in business for a very long time. Yes, it's a different style of professional football. It's done the Canadian way, 12 men on each side of the ball, et cetera, et cetera. but there is a lot to be said about the fact that they stay in business and have their own strong following. And you know what it kind of sounds like? Professional wrestling, something he knows a little bit about. It has its own following. He's managed to stay in business, and you know, people have their knocks on it as far as what it is and whether or not they like it. But you know, he's still standing like Tony Montana. So, you know, I bet that there's a whole lot. You know, like you said, they're taking a little from college, a little from Canada, a little from the NFL, and they're making a game.
Definitely.
Hey, John.
Yep.
Adewale Akinyoe Agbaje.
Yeah, I did. I looked it up, but I didn't want to say. I couldn't say his full name because you were in the middle of a sentence.
I wanted to throw that out there real quick. I just go ahead and finish your thought. Just wanted to throw that out there real quick.
I'm looking it up. It's a pain in the butt here. It looks like there's a combination of how many years you've played in the league and like what contract you're on. It looks like there's a lot of bonuses involved with CFL contracts. They're not exactly all made to the public. It's very secret society what they're doing up there in Canada. It's not all public information. And oh, by the way, here's another thing that we know that we don't know about CFL football. The owners do not open their books at all. You will never really truly know what they're bringing in various fashions as far as like merchandise and concessions. They never fully disclose those types of things where we know in the NFL what the league makes and what the shared revenue is. And it's very bizarre that they keep that all under wraps. You know, it's said that some teams are always in the red, and you know, kind of like the NBA. You know, there's half a dozen teams that pretty much pay for another 20. You know, league wide, and I think the CFL is kind of that way. But as I'm trying to look up information for you guys to give you those numbers, I can't find any because they're holding them secret.
Do you think these partnerships with the international football leagues is going to help try to get them into the black?
Well, I think that Randy Ambrosie, number one, as a former player and now commissioner, he's got the league headed in the right direction. And yes, if I sign, you know, speaking of not being able to pronounce names, I've seen some guys, you know, from their combines and draftings and all of this nature with names that are, you know, Gesundheit, triple word score. But, you know, I think that once those guys start seeing the field, you know, from Poland or Austria or Germany, Italy, I would expect, number one, ratings to start popping up from those countries where these players are from. Jersey sales, you know who doesn't want a Vito Corleone jersey for the BC Lions? You know what I mean? I'd take one too. I know it was you, but you know, it was. I can expect things like that to happen. It can only be a plus for the league. So that one roster spot, sure, they're going to throw $65,000 at a player, okay. But that player is from somewhere. He is a somebody from somewhere, and he now has football fans from far, far away. So the NFL has seen this potential gold mine, and now they've got the AFC East now are allowed one exempt practice squad roster spot. And lo and behold, guess who took the highest drafted one? Billy Belichick on the New England Patriots. Took a guy in the fourth round. Oh, this guy's going to be better than Gronk. I'm telling you. You know, I haven't even seen the guy play, but the fact that Belichick drafted him in round 4 just means he's got to go to the Pro Bowl now. So, you know, we'll see what happens. But, yes, I think that this international player, this global player deal and what he's doing and continuing to build across the world is nothing but a plus for not only those home nations, but the country of Canada and the CFL altogether.
Definitely. Now, before we pop off here, I actually found the schedule for the XFL tryout dates, if anyone's wondering, and if anyone out there listening. I thought
they were not public, though. I know you said you're trying out, but I thought this was just like kind of local combines of invites.
Well, no, it says XFL Summer Showcase. Compete and showcase your skills in football-specific drills, innovative combine testing, get verified measurements. It says the XFL Thursday at 9:55 a.m. 8 cities, 8 opportunities to find talent for hashtag XFL 2020.
But that doesn't mean that they're taking walk-ons. It doesn't say they're not, but it doesn't say that they are. I think what you're seeing is they've kind of maybe doing a little AAF, reaching out to, guys that are a couple years out of high school that, where are they now? And guys that are at colleges, that are contemplating, what Michael, what you've alluded to, these potential transfer guys and stuff like that. They're doing a little AAF regional shopping invites. I think that is what they are doing. I do not think that anybody can just walk on and try out. I could be wrong, but I believe I read that it was false alarm. This is not actually, Papali is not walking through that door for these particular tryouts. I think these will kind of be like invite combine things.
Well, I haven't seen anything else about it. This is the only thing that I've seen because we already know they're going to have the draft. They already have a player pool that they have players for. So if this is that where this is what they're going to use to have a player pool, that's understanding. But I wouldn't think this is just going to be invites because that means they would have to go through channels and they would have to find these players and invite them instead of putting it as public knowledge.
Well, you've seen the show Ballers, haven't you?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go back to the first episode of Ballers where he sends The Rock sends that little guy into the car dealership to ask about that wide receiver. Okay, and he goes, "Hey, how's he doing?" or whatever, this and that. And he goes, "You're not here for this car, are you? You're just here to kick the tires on my buddy." And he goes, "Yep." You know what I mean? The league has been smart enough already with all of their announcements and the way they've been going about it. I wouldn't be surprised if they subtly just reach out to people in that same manner. Well, hey, we're having a little get together in Houston, on June whatever. Come on, tell them to come on down. Might get a crack at a tier 1, tier 2. Who knows? But I'll Google it. I'm more than happy to Google it and eat crow. I love crow. I eat it all the time. So, if I'm wrong, no biggie. But I just didn't think it was a walk-on type of scenario. So I just don't want your heart to be broken if you show up with your cleats, and everything, and your polk high jersey, and they tell you to hit the road.
I mean, I'm 22. If it happens, it happens. I mean, I'm prime. I would be 4 years out of college now. I would have already gone into the draft or undrafted free agent. So, I mean, I'm at my prime. I could do it if I wanted to, but if it happens, it happens.
I'm in my prime too. I'm gonna walk on and try out to be the voice of the league or at least the water boy. One of the.
I mean, honestly,
I can use that water in any face mask.
But they have the Dallas and Houston dates. Dallas is June 7th, while Houston is June 8th. New York is June 14th. Washington, D.C. is June 15th. Los Angeles is June 21st. Seattle is June 22nd. Tampa Bay is June 29th. And to round it out, St. Louis is July 13th.
And it says on their website, just so you know, and you've probably seen this, Kevin, it's got a section for under the job searches, they're hiring and all that. It says players, you can put your film and essentially your football resume. There's multiple ways to attach a film resume.
But you have to put your university on there if you went.
Well, of course. So you can apply and then essentially.
I tried it. I was going to do it. It's just
what position you want to play, all that other stuff. And I'm pretty sure that they've responded to thousands.
Oh yeah, most
that have done that. So I'm kind of thinking that a mix between that and them just kind of outreaching is how they're going to get this guy. But I could be all wrong here. It's all good. I was wrong about my Game of Thrones theories. Arya Stark is not Jaqen Hagar. She's not the god of death. And, I was wrong about a lot.
Could be, though. We don't know.
We never.
Season 9 Magic comes out. She just murders everyone. Man, come on now.
9. Oh, my. Season 9. Better have different directors and writers.
Yeah, exactly. But that's going to do it for this weekend's show of AFN Live. As always, Kevin Drake. Michael actually jumped out a little early. He needed to get some sleep for work tomorrow. And always the White Walker himself, John Turner.
Thank you, Kevin.
Good night.
The Alternative Football News Network. History in the making.